not gonna like this. Episode 54, James MIchels. Today we have none other than, again, his name is James MIchels, an author. I should have cleared this up before we got started. What kind of author are you? I should have cleared that up.
I write crime fiction, crime thriller.
Okay, crime.
Specifically.
We have a crime thriller and crime fiction author with us today. This is a milestone for myself. I've never interviewed an author before, so this was quite the experience for me, and I'm glad that he reached out, and I'm glad we were able to collaborate. And hopefully, this episode that we have that we about to do today goes really well. Nonetheless, before we get started, James, go ahead and introduce yourself to the people.
Hi, everyone. My name's James MIchels, as we've said before. I am a crime thriller author from Michigan. I've been writing for about almost 6 years now, and I have 5 published books. 3 are part of an ongoing series. 1 is a current standalone, and the last one is a collection of short stories. I am actually working on my 6th one as we speak, and as soon as that's done, I'm ready to start working on number 7, which I already have an idea for. So I kind of got into this originally as like just a personal challenge for me. I was planning on just writing one book. I've always been an avid reader, and one day I sat down and said, "All right, you know what? I want to kind of challenge myself. Let's try writing a book." And I remembered when I was a teenager, that I had actually started writing a book back then. But like 2 or 3 weeks into it, I kind of just scrapped the idea and said, "All right, I'm done with that. Back to whatever I do." So remembering that about 10 years later, I said, okay, this time I'm not going to quit. And as I was writing, what I thought was just going to be my one book and I'd be done and hey, I published a book. I started having other ideas for other books. And the story I was working on, which would become my debut novel, Ice Rising, that's this one up here, that actually, I, I knew I was going to have to break that off into a series. So here I am, I'm like halfway through this book, my first book, and I realized, like, wow, like this could really be something. This could really be something I never really thought I had, which was a talent in something. And ever since then, I just, put my nose to the grindstone. And since then, I've been writing. And I mean, if you had told me like 7 years ago that I would be an author, I thought you were crazy. But, looking at it now, here I am with 5 books published, and it's been quite a ride. I gotta say, it's definitely been quite a ride. And I don't think it's something I'm ever going to quit.
That's good. That's good. I'm glad you found your passion. It's always good to see people find their passions in life. Sometimes the first thing you do isn't always the thing that you end up doing forever. For me personally, I'm a personal trainer full time now, but that wasn't always the pathway when I left school. When I graduated high school, I went into college as an athletic training major, but lo and behold, I ended up failing one of my classes that I needed to pass because at the time the program transitioned into a full master's program, and we were the last bachelor's class. So I failed the class, and being that I failed the class, it kind of knocked me off track, and there was no way to really recover. So I had to switch to kinesiology, degree designed for personal training, nutrition, things of that nature. And now I'm doing that full time. So what originally started was me being on the sidelines. I'm not there on TV timeouts, giving your favorite players water, and to me being in the background scenes, training some of your favorite guys and doing things like that. So it's always funny that we always have a game plan, but 9 out of 10, the game plan never goes exactly how we plan it. But my first question for you is, you might have answered it a little bit in your introduction, but what inspired you to become an author? Like, what made you write that first book when you was a teen? What got the gears going for that?
To be honest, I really couldn't explain why I started doing it when I was a teen. Um, I mean, I've always been an avid reader, as I said, and I don't know. I think that was really part of it later on, when I took up writing seriously. I At that point in my life, I was on a real binge, like reading binge. I was working through this list of like 100 books everybody ought to read, and I was about 60 books in there.
Hmm.
And I said to myself, I said, you know what? I want to. Why don't I write a book? But what I started doing was I was saying that to a lot of people. I was saying it to my wife. I was saying it to my family. Saying it to my coworkers. And I think part of that was, okay, I'm telling a lot of people that I want to write a book. That I'm going to write a book. So I better start doing this because I knew that when people say they're going to do something, they become one of two people: those who just talk about it and those who actually do it. And I've always, a lot of times, I've been that former person who just talks about doing something. And I said, you know what? No, I'm going to actually stick with this. And it was intimidating at first, to be honest. I mean, I didn't know where to start. Um, but I realized that the first step in a new direction, it's never easy, but it's always actually very simple. For me, it was just chapter one. Um, and from there, I wrote a chapter. It took me about a week, and I said, "Oh wow, all right, let's write a second chapter." It took me another week, and I said, "Let's write a third chapter." It took me another week, and I wanted to, and I stuck with crime thriller because that's my favorite genre to read. So part of it was that I wanted to I wanted to write the sort of books that I like to read. I think I, I think Rob Zombie does the same thing with his movies. Somebody asked him once. They said, why do you make those types of movies?" He said, "That's the type of stuff I like, so I make those kinds of movies." I guess
You
I
said
have a
Robert Downey?
similar reason.
You said Robert Downey?
Rob Zombie.
Rob Zombie. I'm not familiar with him. Not familiar. Who's Rob Zombie again?
He does well, he's actually a singer of his band Rob Zombie. He did White Zombie way back when, but he actually does horror movies now.
Oh, that's probably why I never heard of it. Yeah, horror movies ain't my cup of tea. That's sometimes the plots just be very obvious. Cannabis is like
That's
we knew
fair.
we knew this was gonna happen. Like he walked into the grave, he died. So, it's a great day. I remember my friend told me my friend had told me he was like yeah, the basic horror movies not for me, but things like Insidious, stuff that's like jump scares. He was like, those are really good movies, but the ones like the regular horror films like Texas Chainsaw, he was like, no. But the jump scare movies, he really liked. So yeah, I think I'll be
Definitely.
the same kind of way. I need something to catch me off guard. Okay, I was not ready. A good haunted house hits, but if I know it's coming, it's not going to scare anybody.
Right.
But nonetheless, it's like I said, it's pretty cool that you actually took those steps. You stopped delaying it. You stopped telling people. You actually was like, all right, let me put the pen to the paper. Let me, see what happens. What I create, and that's always good. And you seem that you're very proud of your work. You seem like you've loved everything you've done up to this point, and that's really good. So let's dive into a little bit of what it takes to be an author. So my second question is: there are three types of persuasion that you can write in. What style is used more in your writing?
Types of persuasion. That's a good question. I've never actually I've never really thought of it like that. I mean, uh, when it comes to writing, I had spent 2 years kind of really trying to figure out what type of writer I'd be. Would I be like a contemporary writer? Would I be somebody who just kind of a speculative writer? Um, and I realized that I really just want to entertain. So that's like my main. But at the same time, not only do I want to entertain, but I really want to draw emotions from the reader. I want them to really feel the story because I think that's the most powerful feeling. Like I've read books that have made me cry. I've read books that have made me mad, um, in a good way. Like feeling a sort of type of anger for a certain character that you're meant to. And there were books I've read that have actually made me like cry with tears of joy. I'd never done that before. And there's such powerful feelings, and of course, with thrillers, there's always that, you know, kind of like having the reader almost like trapped when like you're dreading to see what's going to happen next, but you just have to see what happens next. Or in a book's case, reading. And I've wanted to do that with mine. I wanted to like really kind of like strap my reader in to the roller coaster ride, put the handlebars, put the safety bar on so they can't go anywhere, and just keep them, stuck in the ride. And the best the best way to do that is just keep them visually involved in the story. and emotionally involved with the characters, really feeling what they're feeling, kind of like taking a passenger, yeah, the shotgun seat next to them as they're going, as the characters are going on their trip.
And I feel that. I actually agree because actually it's funny how you just said that, and it actually ties into the book that I ended up reading. Like you said, you wanted to get people geared in. Well, you had did that when the book I had read. I don't think I told anybody at this point was the Ballad of Johnny Carlo. That was a book of his I read, and in the first introduction in chapter one, he does exactly what he said. He got me geared in. He explained the whole scene, how they move, how they do things, broke it almost down to a science, and he did it like throughout the entirety of the book. Like it wasn't just like, the characters just pulled up, they completed their target and then it was just the end of it. Now you built it up. Like you built it up like, okay, now we know why they gotta go get this person. And now it just kept building on, building on, building on, building on up. And I tried to keep pace. It took me a little while to read the book. But it was kind of like when I had picked it up and I read like 2 or 3 chapters one day, and then I would stop and then I'll be like, okay, all right, now I got to come back and read it because now it's left me with something that I gotta see what's gonna happen next. Because like, all right, now we into it. So it was real. It was really good to like read. And I'm not a huge reader. That's not something I normally do. So this was like a big thing for me. I read a book and I didn't plan on reading one, but it turned out to be really really good. So I'm glad I had took on the experience. And emotionally, I was somewhat invested into the book. I could feel for the characters a little bit. Like, okay, I see why they feel this way. I see why they feel that way. I see why I got Johnny here. He went the other way away from the mafia because he broke his code. He couldn't do it anymore. He felt an emotional investment into some of the other characters in the book. And he was like, yeah, I can't kill these guys. There's no way I can do this. So it was like it's good to see that you put a sense of morality in that character, and it wasn't just like how Vincent was, where he was just all right, another person on the list. Let's just get him out of here. Keep it going. Keep it going. So the parallels between the two characters was really, really interesting. And, you talked about vivid imagery, which was a key element throughout the entire book. Like you could from the killing scenes, from the love scenes, from the talking scenes, from the intimidation scenes, you could kind of visualize everything that's happening while it's in the book, like you're in, a cinema or a movie, for example. And I just want to know why that was a particular emphasis in this book and maybe all your books, being that you are a crime thriller author.
I guess I wanted the reader to see what I saw.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I think that exposition and detail, kind of setting the stage, is very important. Um, to a point. I mean, I've read books where the authors will have to describe every single little scene, like two guys meet in a bar that you're never going to see again. I don't really need to know everything about the bar because I can kind of imagine what a bar looks like. But if it's a very important scene, or like an office where they're going to have a lot of meetings, or um you know a park where they're going to have a showdown, you really want to kind of as accurately in your head portray it um on the paper. And like I said, it's all part of really kind of keeping the reader, really kind of like allowing them to really see with their minds what, like, everything that's going on. Like, that's very important for me, and it's very um key point in, like I said, keeping the reader really invested in the story. I
That's
want
true.
I want my books to really, I mean, I write to entertain, but I really want my books to kind of have that imprint on somebody's mind, where they'll, like, I think one of the best, the best, some of the best authors, when they write a book, you'll think back to a specific scene from, or a specific scene from a specific book, and you'll think immediately of what the detailed of how detailed that setting is. So if you read a book about an author, or an author wrote a book about a cruise ship or something, and it was such a great book, so impactful, and the setting was so beautiful, you'll think back 2 years later about that cruise ship and exactly the setting that you imagined that it was in. You know,
Mhm.
like a fictional memory almost.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. I wish in school and my mom and my teachers, I wish they would have gave me these crime thriller or these books that actually have like somewhat of an action scene involved. I probably would have read more as a child, but unfortunately, I was always given the Robert Frost and Edgar Allan Poe poets. Made me have a dislike for reading. I couldn't do it. I couldn't read those. Those are some of the like they are great authors. They've inspired a lot of people to write a lot of books. But I remember reading The Grapes of Wrath in high school, and that is one book I promise I will never ever read again. One of the
I've read that book.
that was one of the most boring books ever. Like it was just so
Just
dry.
ended.
It's just so dry throughout the whole story. I had to read that for an honors class, and it made me hate reading. I was like, yeah, I can't do this anymore. But then the following year, my English teacher made us check out another book, and she was like, you can check out whatever you want. Just check something you're going to actually read. And I was like, okay. And I ended up checking out Percy Jackson, the Lightning Thief, the one that's in theaters, came out like 2012. And I liked that book. And then when I went to college, I ended up reading The Hate You Give, and there was another book. I can't remember the other book. It was a guy by the name of Simon. It was a book about him, adapting to being part of the LGBTQ community. And that was
Hmm.
another book I read. And all those books I enjoy because, and for those that don't know what it means to write to get emotion out of a reader, it's called pathos, the technical definition for those that don't know. And you wanna write like that because me, I like to feel what's going on, and all three of those books you could feel something in between those characters. Like, okay, now we know where you're going. Now we know why you feel like this. It also develops a better understanding. Like prime example, like obviously we know the issues that the LGBT community faces every day, and reading a book like that gives me a different insight. Helps me understand. Okay, this is what it's like.
Definitely.
Now I know if I interact with these individuals in public, I know how to respect them. I know how to treat them. How do they want to be treated? And that's why when you write books in fiction or even nonfiction, even you always want to make sure you always have somewhat of a connection or develop it with the reader because books teach you a lot of things. They teach you different things in different ways, more ways than you thought it could. So, but that leads me to the next question is what inspired the writing of the Ballad of Johnny Carlo? Why this book?
Um, that's a very good question. So, to be honest, it kind of just came to me. That's typically how my stories tend to come about. I will. I wanted to create. Uh, hmm. I wanted to take a character and really kind of throw him in a whole different environment where he changes his he changes kind of, not the side he's on, but he changes his perspective. I think one of the best types of characters are the ones that start off either as a bad guy or a good guy and just kind of convert to the other side for whatever reason. Either they break bad or they see the light or whatever. They're thrown in circumstances that challenge um their original perspective. Like in Johnny's case, he had a very romantic view of the mafia, very old school code of honor that he saw. And when he saw it was an illusion, it really changed him. He said, "Well, I can't have anything to do with this story." So I wanted to, and I really went back and forth, and I wanted him to really kind of meet somebody who was the complete opposite. Not really the complete opposite of, like, opposite side of the law. And that involves the character Alicia Abraham, who you've read about. She's the female lead.
Yep.
And, I wanted to create also kind of a relationship between these two, a very stark contrast relationship, which actually, in some ways, to be honest, mirrors that of my wife and I. We come from different backgrounds and whatnot. I mean, I'm not from New York, but I'm from Michigan. She's not from Louisiana. She's from South Carolina. But it was like, I'd say there was a lot of inspiration from my own life, us kind of meeting, and then like me having different perspectives and whatnot since I've come to know her and everything, and how we've um, grown closer together, how we kind of stick together, and we like dealing with whatever kind of odds have come against us before. So, but I think that was what's the word? I think that was um subliminal.
Mm.
You know, that was me doing, like, I was writing the book and I was like, oh hey, you know what? No wonder this this feels kind of familiar. Aside from, I was never a hitman or anything, so I don't.
Disclaimer, disclaimer. He's a law-abiding citizen. Everyone, he's a
Yes,
law-abiding.
yes, yes.
He
I
doesn't
did
live a
just get a
double
speeding
life.
ticket the other day, but it happens.
He said a speed. He lives a law. He's a law-abiding citizen. He does not participate in the actions in the book. This is
I just
solely
write
this
it.
is Yep, this is solely a depiction. These people are not real. Whatever you read is not real. It's actually funny that you're a crime thriller author. Speaking of all the crime thriller authors, I wonder if they ever put a disclaimer in the book like these actions you are reading today are not real. These characters are completely made up. The story is not real whatsoever. This is just a book about a hitman that just chose to go a different way after he realized that the what he thought he was part of was not what he was a part of. And
I actually put a disclaimer in every book I have.
oh, you have? Dang, I must have missed that part. I didn't even see that. Might have to look at that again next time I do look at it. But yeah, it was really good. I kind of like that's what you was trying to create. You wanted to have that character that was kind of like the opposite side of the spectrum from Johnny, which was Alicia. But I also like the part where you had Frank there too. Like, all right, so like when Johnny and Alicia met later on in the book, it made sense why when they got in that argument towards the end of the book, like why Alicia was so frustrated because she was like, you think that I'm clueless or I'm foolish to it? No, my father's a monster too, so I know exactly the life you come from. Like I know everything about your life somewhat. I don't know all the intrinsics and the nuances of it, but I understand the general perspective of what you do and how you do it. And if that was conveyed to me earlier, I probably would not be mad or frustrated that this is what it had to go down to. And she kind of backed it up. Like that final scene, she was doing just as much as shooting as Johnny was, and everybody else. She had picked up just as many people as Johnny had. Like they was both taking everybody down. It was like, oh, okay, yeah, she know how to know.
I really wanted Leisha's character to really be able to hold her own.
Great
I've
job.
seen, like, I've read a lot of like thrillers where there's the male and female lead, and the female lead she's usually like the emotional support for the male lead while he's going, kicking butt and everything. No, I
Mm-hmm.
really wanted her to hold her own. That's why, like,
Yeah.
you've read some scenes where I'm not going to give it away, but it kind of seems like the odds are against her, and and you're kind of expecting like, okay, this is when things are going to go bad for her, but she's able to get out of those situations, and maybe that it is with the assist of somebody else sometimes, but she's able to reciprocate as well. So it's not just Johnny going around running and gunning. Leisha, she can do the same. She's just being an officer with a higher set of morals, a police officer with a higher set of morals. She's not as quick to pulling the trigger as he is.
So, but the question I do have is about Alicia is you know, with Ernesto, she broke it off with him. Like there was no let me rekindle, let me try to fix this, there was no establish of fixing that. So why did you choose to have Alicia break it off with Ernesto, but try to rekindle a relationship with Johnny? Why the difference in that? Because both of them had kind of did the same thing to cause the relationship to end. Why the different approaches for her?
That's a very good question. With Ernesto, it was he really kind of betrayed the force. Doing what he did. Spoiler alert. And with Johnny, it was, you know, I think she knows she kind of had this habit of dating guys that kind of not came from the wrong side of the tracks, but like, in Johnny's case, he hadn't actually betrayed anything. He just didn't show that he was who she had thought that he was. And she had a feeling that he kind of came from a rougher time in his life back in New York, even though he never really said, like, he kind of said he went to New Orleans to start a new life. So I think she kind of had a sort of image about him, whereas then with Ernesto, she thought that he is this like golden child police officer who he makes some bad choices that kind of flip her viewpoint of him on the side. So, and then of course there's the whole thing of fate. I created a sort of magnetic force between Johnny and Leisha, if you noticed, and her realizing that he was really trying that when they met, he was really trying to be a better person than he was. Like he had already separated himself from that life. And then even though he made bad choices later on, or maybe choices she wouldn't have done, um, she kind of understood it was more for her. And then, Leisha also had, like Johnny, Leisha also had a very um maybe sort of like a black and white look at morality, because she is like, of everybody in the book, she is like the lawful good character. She is the true heroine of the story. Johnny's more of an anti-hero. And with her talk with Frank and realizing that in this type of situation sometimes, you know she had to broaden her perspective about why Johnny was doing what he was doing. And I think that led her to understand more of, now the question was, you know, what would have happened at the end of the story had things gone a different route. I'm not going to I don't want to spoil the ending for the readers. So, I kind of wanted to leave that little what if as well, if that makes sense. I think I might have digressed
No,
a
no,
little
no,
bit.
that make perfect sense. Like you said, they was you depicted the view that you wanted to depict. Like you saw, we all saw that he wanted to be different. He wanted to be like, this is it. I don't want to do this anymore. And being that he was somewhat open and honest about it, it did create that somewhat sense of forgiveness. Like, okay, okay, you did tell me that your life
Right,
was a little rough, but you didn't tell me your life was your life. Right.
right.
It was
Ernesto had a
rough.
sort of self-righteousness thing about him,
Mm-hmm.
especially when, uh, like when they kind of broke it off in during like the middle of the story. um he hit some low points with her, kind of, maybe possibly saying that she was involved in whatever he was doing, or bringing up her father, who's like, it's everybody's known that they're related, but nobody really talks about it because they're aware that Leisha is a honest police officer, very unlike her father, who is a crime lord.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah, me and Ernesto didn't become too good of friends as he re-entered the story. I was like, oh, great, he's about to blow the
I
whole.
didn't know what I was actually gonna do with him.
Cause he definitely he came on favorite a little bit. He was like, this guy's a sucker, man. Like, come on, for real. Like, this is what we doing now. Like, walk away in peace, man. Walk away. Give it up.
That's true. I actually shoot from the hip when I write,
Uh-huh.
so I had different designs in my head for what was going to happen with Ernesto and Johnny and Leisha, and by the end of the book, it all just kind of changed on me. But I think for the better. Um, when we get done recording, I'll probably message you what I meant to have them
Of course.
do, and you know, the story changed on me. I think
Yeah, yeah,
Stephen King said it best.
but
I don't
but
make the news. I report.
yeah,
I
but
report about it.
some of the best things happen from coincidence.
Yeah.
That's how, like we talked about earlier. Like we talked about the game plan. Like sometimes the game plan don't work out. Sometimes you go in the mindset with A, B, C, and you end up on X, Y, Z. Like, oh, okay, didn't expect this to happen. Like some of the like I'm a huge music guy. I'm a huge music guy. I love
Mhm.
music. So like I listen to a lot of hip hop and rap music, and freestyling is like the epitome of rap. If you cannot freestyle, you don't belong in the genre whatsoever. So
That's fair.
like I'm used to things taking a wild turn or, different. Like, okay, all right. New storyline, new introduction. That's all good. But as long as you can tie them all together, it makes sense. Like a rapper with a freestyle. Like most times the rappers freestyle, they start with something random. But then they connect the randomness to something subjective, and then subjective, and then when you put it together, it all makes sense. Like, oh, okay, all right, now I see what you got here. You started off with something like, oh, all right, okay, you connected it, and now it's like a whole story is being told. So like it didn't. I don't know if you thought that writing from the hip would have threw somebody off guard. I don't know if it would have, but me personally, it didn't. Being that I am a huge music fan and I love rap music and things of that nature, hearing different perspectives, different views, how people portray it, because most rappers I listen to are from low income areas. They come from rough upbringings, and each and every one of them, though it's the same background, each and every one tell the story in 100 different ways. That just makes it all the more interesting. So it's no issue with that at all. But let's change the topic before we drop too many spoilers. We don't drop any spoilers. We want to keep everybody invested. Those that are reading and those that have not read that want to read in the future. With that being said, we're gonna kind of close off here. Is that now that you pledged a few books, you said you're up to six now. Now working on you now working. No, you were published five. You're working on six, and you already got in the work, so you want seven as well. What is the ultimate goal for yourself as an author?
Movies would be
Movies. Oh, see,
definitely the next step. I would love to see. So I'm a huge movie buff too. So I would love to see my work on the big screen. With the Ballad of Johnny Carlo, I actually have like I had a list of characters. But the problem is some of the actors I had in mind are a little old for some of their roles, so I'm gonna have to change that up a little bit just in my fantasy. I would love to see the Ballad of Johnny Carlo made into a movie. I think my Ice series, that's like Ice Rising, Icebox, and Ice Rain, which I actually have right here. Um, I would love to see that into maybe like a mini series or like a full on TV show. Yeah, I mean, I think that's like the higher step for authors to go. And I think it really shows that when a whole different industry sees, that makes a whole different version of a story, sees your work and says, you know what, like, we can build this really. Like, we can make this so that people can actually visually see. I think it's one of the ultimate forms of, flattery, that people would say, let's take your story and invest millions of dollars and spend countless hours of our time making this happen and putting it in front of millions of people because we think it's really that good of a story. I mean, that would speak volumes for me.
I mean, I'm all with you. I would love to see the Ballad of Johnny Carlo in the movie because if the imagery in the book is anything like it would be in the movie, I know I'll be front row locked in. I see, and it's not something. It's something I am used to. Like if J.K. Rowling, Hunger Games. And Hunger Games was not a movie to start out. Hunger Games was a book, and they brought the book to life. And Hunger Games ended up being one of the best trilogies of the last decade, and people that ended up watching it and loved it. Like me, I like the first Hunger Games movie. Now the second and the third one, I kind of fell off with that because I wasn't too interested in that. But the first one, the first movie of Hunger Games was a blockbuster. That was like a really really good movie because I remember reading that book in seventh grade. I read it in the seventh grade, and then watched the movie. It came out. It came out not too long ago. I watched Summer Catching Fire. I didn't kind of enjoy that one as much. That one was kind of like a little boring. It was like a filler movie, so I feel like they could have went without that one. But books coming to life is definitely something that is interesting. We got Harry Potter. We've seen it multiple times. Like it's not a foreign subject for people to take a book and bring it to life, especially if the book has life, which the Ballad of Johnny Carlo does. So it would be nice to see how you would do it. Maybe for the actors, you might have to go small budget actors. There are some small budget people that could turn a small budget film into a multi-million dollar success. You may have to go that route.
Very
I
true.
know. Yeah, you got the fantasy. I know we got the big time people. You want the big time people to come. You never know. That could work out for you. You could do this move. You could do it. You could get some small actors, create a film, and then maybe 10, 15 years down the road, you get a remake, and it'd be somebody of your favorite, your actors, some of the best actors in the game when it comes to that time.
That's very
But
true.
that is pretty much all I got. Do you have anything else you want to say for the people before we conclude, or any question you want to ask of myself?
Um, Yeah, if anybody wants to follow me, I'm on Facebook.com/ James the Real Mike. I'm on Twitter.com/ James Real Mike. I'm on TikTok.com/ at James the Real Mike. I'm on Instagram at Instagram.com/ James Michels and YouTube.com/ James Michels Books. All of my books, the Ballad of Johnny Carlo that we talked about, I actually have physical copy right here, is available on Amazon for Kindle Unlimited, paperback, and hardcover. I don't have hardcover versions of all my other books, but I do have them on paperback, Kindle, and Kindle Unlimited, and that is Ice Rising, Ice Box, Ice Rain, part of an ongoing series, so it is still ongoing. And of course, for those of you that prefer shorter stories, like maybe a collection of short stories, it's always Life's Dark Corners. 5 different people, 5 epic tales of crime. So
Okay.
yeah,
Oh,
and then stay tuned for numbers. Actually, while we're on the subject, the 6th book I'm writing is actually part of the Ballad of Johnny Carlo universe. Um, there's another mafia family that's mentioned in the Ballad of Johnny Carlo called the Oro family.
yeah,
Um,
I remember Emilio. Mm-hmm.
Yes, this is actually about his family. It
Mm-hmm.
takes place years before the Ballad of Johnny Carlo. It talks about kind of like not the total downfall of that family because they're still around, but how they kind of lost a lot of prominence. How they basically became subservient to Johnny Carlo's mafia family, the Argentos. So you will see the return of some characters. You'll see Dominic and Aurora. You'll see Johnny. You'll see Vincent. You'll see Andrei Lev, who was the Russian mob boss in about Johnny Carlo. You'll see Emilio Oro. So some of these characters will come back. They're younger versions, of course. Um, and yeah, and a whole cast of new characters. So you'll be able to see how Johnny and Aurora met, how definitely the
That's
insight into Johnny
definitely
and Vincent's close relationship, and yeah, it'll give you a different what's the word, dimension for the characters that we've come to love.
that's cool. I look forward to hearing. I hope you finish that, and I definitely will be reading that when I see it, of course. But do you have a link tree? I know. Do you have a link tree by any chance? I know you said a lot of websites. Do you have like a link tree?
Um, I can send it to you. I can
Okay.
send all of it to you if
Okay,
that'll
cool.
work.
Okay, cool. Because I just want to have a link or something I can put up here and show people that we have. But if not, all the links for everybody, like always, all Instagram pages, Facebook, Twitter pages, links to all the pages are always in the description of all of the video. So that is that. But likewise, this is another YNGLT classic, as I like to say. This is number 4 of season 4. So join us as we continue this great season, as I rebuild and come back and develop more episodes. Hopefully, people that see this that they are not afraid to reach out, as James did here, and shout out. And I don't know if you can relate, but those that can relate, I was not T-Pain here. I checked those Instagram DMs. I checked them. Therefore, I was able to find him, because if I didn't, I would have never saw it. So check your DMs if you have a podcast or you have any business that you want to expand to others. Check your DMs. Sometimes people send stuff and it can go into the general box. I don't know why there's a general and a primary on the thing, but there is. So go ahead and check them. Check your requests every once in a while, periodically, so you can see guys like James and any other people that may reach out to you and want to be part of your show and any other things you got going on. But likewise, that's all I got for you guys today. As always, your host Ira signing off, and see y'all soon.